Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to apply to the Nurse Faculty Loan Program. This is a federal program that runs every year and is designed for schools to be able to set up programs that will grant forgivable loans to students that will allow the students to train to become future faculty members. And so this is a great incentive to a school because they're able to offer financial aid. They're able to grow the body of teachers for new nurses in their communities and to be able to do things like increase service for rural areas and other things like that within the scope of the program. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But let's first start with the official introduction to this. The NFLP seeks to increase the number of qualified nursing faculty nationwide by providing low-interest loans for individuals studying to be nurse faculty and loan cancellation for those who then go on to work as faculty. Successful applicants, meaning the people who are applying to set up this program at their school, successful applicants establish and operate a student loan program, including maintaining a fund, providing loans to students enrolled in advanced education nursing degree programs, and monitoring compliance with program requirements. In exchange for completion of up to 4 years of post-graduation full-time nurse faculty employment in an accredited school of nursing, graduates receive cancellation of up to 85% of the original student loan amount plus interest on that as authorized by the program. NFLP also encourages advanced practice registered nurses to serve as full-time preceptors within an academic practice partnership framework in an effort to expand clinical training opportunities for nursing students. The goals are to expand the nation's capacity to train nurses by first, increasing the number of adequately prepared and qualified nursing faculty nationwide, by supporting training of advanced education nursing students who will serve as nurse faculty upon graduation with a focus on doctorate preparation, decreasing the financial barrier of serving as nurse faculty through loan cancellation, and by expanding clinical training capacity by increasing access to designated joint nurse faculty, for example, serving as APRN preceptors. Now, the particular focus of this program is one that I have had the question, well, hold on. Who should be the applicant of record here? Now, the answer is different if you're asking who is doing the legwork, the moving and shaping, and who is doing the actual submission of the application. And at most universities, there is a office with a name such as the Office of Sponsored Programs, the Office of Research, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, and so on and so forth. Sometimes even the Office of External Funding, whose job is to submit grant applications for state and federal grants on behalf of the university. Now, who signs it may go all the way up to and including the level of provost, depending on your institutional level. And it may also have a designee who is signing on behalf. And what this does is it channels the actual administration, the communication back and forth, the compliance requirements. These are all channeled to a central office that is set up to not only supervise the filing of paperwork related to this, but also to make sure that we're practicing good financial stewardship. And if, say, the program chair who originally wrote the application moves on, the communications will still go to that central office. And so there's no loss of continuity or funding there. Now, as we go along, I'm going to be talking about this based on my experience helping folks at other universities apply for this program, but I'm happy to entertain questions and requests for feedback and explanations. And also I have a number of write-in requests to discuss about the application process. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Please do not wait on those because I would rather answer a question when you have it. Now, furthermore, according to the official description, NFLP projects will establish and or maintain a distinct NFLP loan fund account and provide fiscal oversight in accordance with the program requirements. So this is basically saying don't commingle the money with something else. And this is a requirement for many federal grants. So one of the things that the research office does, or Office of Sponsored Programs and whatever name it might be operating, they will keep track of creating that account. And usually they have a set where when a grant is totally spent down, they will then repurpose that account for another thing, but they're able to track all of those and be able to easily produce reports. Besides it being a requirement, no one wants the messy bookkeeping of looking at an account and figuring out which things came from one grant or another. Now, the projects aren't just maintaining that loan fund, they're also dispersing loans to students who are enrolled in accredited programs. And since one of the requirements is that you be an accredited program to receive this grant, that shouldn't be a problem. And then there's the commitment for nurse faculty service upon graduation. We're going to come back to that because that's something that one of the programs I helped apply for this initially thought, oh, well, we can't do that. And then through some polling, they were able to find that actually a lot of their program faculty were already, sorry, a lot of their students were already faculty at different programs and were not only intending, but in some cases completing their DNP degree as a condition to get a faculty appointment that was full-time or on a continuing basis, et cetera. And then this last item is going through standard things for any award, but specific to this program, you're operating an NFLP loan fund, collecting on the loans that are borrowed, managing cancellations and repayments, monitoring compliance, and providing accurate programmatic and financial data to show successful project implementation. So basically, that is all stuff that is managed either in a spreadsheet or a spreadsheet-like database that tracks the loans that are out, the loans that are paid back in different guises or forgiven, and finally, the numbers, what's in it for the institution. Well, any doctoral degree will cost more than time. It'll cost some money for the institution, for the students. And for the students, cost sensitivity is a huge factor. And many master's level nursing programs will ask their soon-to-be graduates to do the math, sometimes profiling nearby programs and saying, hey, if you complete this degree, if you complete this credential, this licensure, this certification, this is the payback period, the period in which you expect the financial gains from completing this degree to turn into a net positive. And I think you'll agree with me that an 85% loan cancellation, removing 85% of the cost of completing a degree, is a huge financial incentive. And often, because of the nature of how professional degree programs are funded, often is providing something that simply does not exist in the program otherwise. It is paradoxically much easier to get nursing scholarships at the Bachelor of Science level than at the doctoral level. And so this program specifically can forgive up to 85%. And one of the modifications from how it was first proposed is that you can forgive progressive amounts on this. So let's say a student wants to teach for 1 to 2 years, and then they're planning on going back into full-time clinical practice. Great. For the first year of full-time teaching, they will be able to get 20% plus 20%. That's 40% of their loan canceled. And not just the loan itself, not just the principal, but the interest that would have accrued on that 40%. Now, let's say that they come back after a year away and then they complete another year. Well, that's 3 of the 4 possible. So they can get 60% total forgiven there. And then if you do all 4 years, all 4 years that the eligibility allows, that's 85% of the loan cancellation, at which point you have not just great credit, but you have all the income that would have gone towards servicing a loan and paying interest that is now available for everything else. So it both encourages dedication and service to the field, but also is not prohibitive of other employments because our average DNP student, I found at every program I've worked at, works somewhere upwards of 40 hours per week as a nurse. The median varies by the program, but it's usually been somewhere above 55 hours per week. And so many of our graduates who have gone on to teach are also continuing to work clinically. So it's not a exclusive thing, but it is something where if you check off the boxes for full-time, that is what the federal government is concerned with for your qualifying full-time faculty employment. And don't worry, we're going to look at the detailed guidelines in a moment. Now, if you've come to our other grant writing webinars, you know that the central clearinghouse for federal grants is grants.gov. Don't go to simpler.grants.gov right now. There are a few kinks they're working out, but we want to go to grants.gov. Now, if you went there right now, you'd probably notice a couple things right away, which is if we went to grants.gov and searched for nursing faculty loan program, you won't see it. I'll get into the why in a moment. So if we just search for nursing faculty loan there in quotation marks, nothing coming up. So let's take away those quotation marks, do a search, and you find that doesn't look like what we're looking for. There's too many things, and that's just word search matching. So instead, let's narrow that search in a different way. Let's put nursing and faculty together, do that search, and you'll find there are 0 forecasted, 0 posted, but 10 closed and 20 archived. So what we're going to do is we're going to check closed and remove the other ones. And what this allows you to do is to see all of the federal funding programs that are not currently accepting applications, but are also recent enough that they haven't been archived. You can look at the archived. You'll see a few more. And what's relevant here is that you can see that this program has been running for a good long time. You can see just on the screen going back to 2009. This is actually a very popular program in Congress for support, so it is one we expect to be around for a good while. But here, even though the applications for the current cycle closed in February of this year, we can see that, the year before they were due in February of 2024. And the year before that in May of 2023. And in fact, there were other parallel programs for various nursing faculty things. So this is a program that has run for many years, is anticipated to continue running for many years, but they have an annual call. And even though the program is not accepting applications right at this very moment, you can see the exact guidelines that were asked before. And as part of the research for this, I went and looked and compared those, and I can tell you that in general, the requirements for this have not been changing significantly. Now, if we were to click through this, I would say sort this by closing date so you can see the most recent relevant thing. And you might notice, hey, there's this nursing workforce diversity program. If I am running a program where I'm interested in using the nursing faculty loan program to, in substance, increase the program financial aid, well, you also might be interested in looking at this, where if we look at related documents, we can see an announcement there. Now, our goal here is not to focus on that one, but we are going to be looking at the nurse faculty loan program. If that's something you'd like us to also look at, just let us know, because we can always follow up on that, and that is also expected to come back every year. So the link there took us to this handy dandy booklet, which again, I compared with the previous year and found that the requirements are broadly similar. So let's try and get a sense of scope first. Now, you can go back and forth between different opportunities in the database, and you can get kind of an overview. And so let's do that. And for the person who wrote in and saying that they would like to review the other loan in the future, absolutely. If we have a little bit of time today, we can also compare that. So if we go back to our search here, we have, okay, we can see we have the funding opportunity. That's very helpful for tracking things. That one was the Nursing Workforce Diversity Program. And the one that we are most interested in right now for today is the Nurse Faculty Loan Program, which you'll notice is HRSA 2570 as opposed to 71. Now, they both have a good amount of money thrown at them. And just remember to scroll down to see not just the eligibility, but also to see the general things and the context. Something I can say about my colleagues at the HRSA, they have historically been very good and very fast at answering my questions about things. So if you're wondering about applying for a program, go ahead and send them an email. And often they have helpful webinars and sometimes samples of past applications that you can look at. Also, you can look at the list of programs that received funding and browse who got that. And nursing often being a very collegial world at that level, just ask people if they would be willing to share parts of their application. I'm fortunate that my colleagues have been very generous in sharing those, and I in return. Because once your program is funded, you are not in direct competition with other people, and we need a whole lot more nurses the whole country around. All right, back to our book here, and we'll go do a little bit of back and forth here as is relevant to our mission here. All right, so we're back in the program booklet for the Nurse Faculty Loan Program. And the first thing I always recommend that people do, besides check the due date, is to go ahead and look at the award information so that they know what kind of asks they're planning on making of someone else. Now, you're not allowed to earn profit from the federal award, but you can also cover expenses for the people who will be administering the program. And you can also budget appropriately for the administrative expenses charged with running this. So we can see here that they helpfully start us out with a get ready to apply section. Now, if you're working for an accredited college or university in the United States, they should already have a sam.gov account. But if for some reason you're working for a new institution, it doesn't have one yet, perhaps you're working on the APRN mentoring thing, it, in my experience, has taken about a week to get a new registration and approved. And the important thing is to not be trying to do this the day that something is due. Now, they have tips for preparing grant proposals and how to prepare your application. I highly recommend that. And they normally hold a webinar here that you can track. And I would recommend also subscribing to their application list. But in terms of what's being submitted, you can see that we have a core set of components: a project abstract, project narrative, supporting documents, and some forms. And hopefully, we have some page limits that help tell us how much actually has to be written here. So we're going to skip over the next things, because if you're having trouble with the formatting or getting down your word count or even finessing the wording, you can always come to the Online Writing Center or work with your colleagues. But we're right now interested in just seeing, okay, how should we go about doing that? And so project narrative, we see, all right, what's the purpose of the project? That's pretty straightforward: to attract skilled students to faculty positions. This is the kind of thing where if you know in advance, it's easy to start collecting information on things like student intentions, alumni activities, and such. And then this will actually be fairly short. It's a requirement that you write about it, but a program that is graduating and you can demonstrate through surveys or other information that many of your students will be more interested in teaching through a program like that, pretty easy to do. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking about this now in May for what will likely be applications due in February. Now, there is a request that we look at the other program, and without wanting to lose our focus here, I think it is fair to ask, well, can you apply for one? Can you apply for both? The answer is yes, but how will they differ? So let's take a look at that other booklet here. So again, number 70 is a nurse faculty loan program. This is the nursing workforce diversity program, which is also run and has, although the exact definitions of diversity have varied, it is pretty easy to argue for the need for diversity in all areas of healthcare because the patients are just as diverse as this country and everyone in it. Now, this even gives you some introductory information about some of the disparities here, and the ANA and other organizations have written about the need for diversity as well. Now you can see that this program is actually fairly good. 2,000 nursing students, we need all the nursing graduates we can. And we can see that the people who are coming for this program, many of them identified as different types of minorities that were targeted by this program to try and increase the number of graduates. So these people were self-identifying as underrepresented minorities, and then the rest of the balance is coming from rural backgrounds, which is another area that Health and Human Services has been trying to increase the size of the workforce. So let's zero in on these program goals here. So if the other program is designed to increase the number of people who are teaching and training nurses, this is specifically trying to produce more nurses, period. This first one, nursing, increase the number of individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds, including ethnic and racial minorities, underrepresented among registered nurses, which is pretty much every minority, if we look at the nation as a whole, and who are enrolled in nursing degree programs, great, using evidence-based strategies such as holistic admissions as best practices, great. Number two, increase the number of nursing students from disadvantaged backgrounds who are retained and graduate from nursing degree programs. Well, I am on, I think, my 5th nursing program that I have worked with in different guises. And I have found that over and over, the research shows that one of the major barriers to retention and graduation are external financial obligations, direct and indirect. So there's a lot of research that can back up just the claim that offering scholarships will increase retention, in part because of the things that students don't need to do on the side, like pick up extra shifts, do a side hustle, hire a babysitter, or things like, being able to afford an up-to-date computer, things like, things like just not being stressed. And, if you're working with people who are teaching in a program, you can start collecting narratives that you can refer to in the application. And this next one, I am particularly vested in, increase the number of nursing students from disadvantaged backgrounds who receive academic and social support for educational success in nursing degree programs. So what the faculty program is trying to address one bottleneck. This is starting more ground up. Once people are applying for a program, how do you make it possible for them to be admitted into and afford the program? How do you keep them through their journey? How do you support them on their journey? Now, the very first nursing program that I worked for, I was hired to try and address an academic bottleneck. Students were not passing a specific licensing exam, and our goal was to find out how and why. And what we found is that a certain set of the students had the social capital, which means they had the network, the people that they could go and ask questions and ask for support that would help carry them through it. If you come from a family of nurses, if there are nurses you knew growing up You consider peers or mentors. They help you on the journey. Great. If you're new to the field, you may not have access to this as much. And so one of the things that a program funded through like this might do is provide some support to address those disparities in resource access and prior knowledge and networks of information that can be drawn on. Now, the reason why I thought it would be helpful to talk about this now in relation to the other is that if you are doing research to apply for one, you can very easily be also collecting the information to apply to the other one, because these are linked programs addressing different sides of a common problem. So much of your narrative could very easily be reused between them. And from per using successful applications from other institutions, I can say that they often are reused. You don't need to rewrite a whole narrative about what your school does, so long as the key elements are highlighted. Now, this one goes into more detail on the different types of things that are funded, and I'm happy to see that there is a wide variety of things. And I will specifically mention here that this program here requires that the program director of record for the application be a licensed RN. This is important because if you were working with your Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, they might be used to being the person who is signing off on everything. And it's not that you wouldn't be getting their approval, but it's a little different if someone's name has to be on it and then they have to go in and make sure that everything is set up so that even though it's an exception to their normal practice, that it is still being appropriately administered. All right, with that, let us go back to our main focus today, because that is where we have set aside our time for. And so coming back to this, we can see, oh, if you're thinking about that narrative of why are more nurses needed in your area, and frankly, it's the whole country, even New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles, even these major metropolitan areas in the United States have significant nursing shortages. The qualified nursing faculty shortage goes through much of the country as well, but especially in some areas. This is one of those questions where how students will benefit. You can back that up with data, but it's pretty easy narrative to write. This one here is where you might want to be doing some research and in fact, make a running list of things related to this that you want to gather to make writing the narrative easy. How your graduates are impacting the local and national faculty. Where have they gone? What are they doing? Get in touch with your alumni office, see what survey information they're already including. One of my first students that I had in a nursing program, their dream was to go back to their whole hometown and start a clinic. And while they were on their nursing journey, their state authorized independent practice, and they were able to go back and start that clinic. And if you're scrambling at the last minute, it's easy to miss things like that. If you're planning ahead and making a list of, hey, sending out to the faculty, do you know any of our alumni who are doing something like that? It is easy to grab those anecdotes that can really anchor the rest of the data in your application. Also, something that often a Office of Research and Sponsored Programs can help is giving some base demographic data that they are already collecting. When I was at Boston University, for example, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs had lots of sets of sample text and spreadsheets and things to make pulling things like this very easy and fast for the people writing the program, the application. All right, the approach, we're going to jump back here a little bit and say, hey, what's the project narrative? And we see here, there is an overall page limit. So before we go any further, remember the overall limit is 50. Now, when you're including tables, when you're including figures, you can use a lot of that room. It's not that it's required to be 50 pages, I think the shortest one that I saw was around 20. But with these specific things that they're asking you to go through, let's count up the bullets that we've seen so far. 2, 6, 9, 12. Count these individually. 16. So if each of those is about half a page, we've already got 8 pages there. And again, you don't need to write this all at once, but start adding in detail. And then in one of my favorite administrative collective grant writing, a panel of faculty and administrators were each assigned to fill in 1 or 2 bullets each. And there had to be a little bit of rewriting and massaging of the text so that it read continuously. But having people provide these basic details that can then be rewritten by the master grant writer made it go a lot faster. The hard part is usually just getting all the details down, and then how to say it clearly can be done as a follow-up step. This is something, this performance measurement and reporting, this is something that the offices of research and sponsored programs do a lot of, and you can usually look at an example of text that they provided. Evaluations, it usually takes time to do that and to dig up details like this, but it's not hard. And in fact, usually you have examples from past applications from your institution, because most federal funded things have some sort of evaluation requirement like this. You can use this as a starting point. And I will tell you, I saw 3 applications that had the exact same evaluation questions, methods, and barriers listed. So these are, in many cases, national problems where the same, at least basic barriers are being faced around the country. And so it's not surprising if you have the same ways to investigate that. And if you're using a standardized instrument, and there are some for evaluating nursing programs, if you're using a standardized instrument, part of your narrative why we've done this is, oh, other people have used this. This will give comparability. This will allow us to track things as being demonstrated in this other program. And so just going with our guesstimate about perhaps half a page per paragraph, we seem to be looking at somewhere around 12 pages in here. Great. Sustainability, you could do a little bit, you could do a lot. I would say just don't shortchange these, because you will have the space in your application and you can always add more detail, but start with what seem the most key project things. This one here, that's probably going to be the biggest question, because this is where you might be negotiating with the administration and beyond your program. It's not uncommon for getting a large federal award, such as this one, for a program to negotiate with their provost to say, hey, this requires that we have a plan for sustainability. Will you, contingent on our getting this award, commit funding down the road? So let's say that this is a 4-year award, just for this example here. If you say, all right, well, we want to have this run for at least 2 years afterwards so that we can make a narrative about that, that may take some conversations. That may require escalating at different steps. So great thing to be doing now when we're in May, thinking towards next spring. Now, the plan for self-sufficiency, this is a good question for any office that is looking at having a professional program be sustainable. Is the goal to attract donations? Is the goal to have tuition and costs be, if not equal, to sustainable? That's a good check for a program. And if a program has been running for at least 3 years, is 3 years past the first cohort of graduates, then there should almost certainly be conversations going on about what the next step is, just based on how universities and colleges typically manage those programs and want them to be sustainable in the long run. All right, organizational information. So this is again one of those sections that there's a bit of information here, but it's actually fairly easy to write because mission statement, that already exists in some shape and form. Structure already exists. Scope, statistics about the program, how many people are in it, that already is being tracked by the university. Explain how they support your ability. Okay, well, expand on that. This is basically your prose introduction to saying, hey, here's how we're going to make sure it can happen, usually with reference to the apparatus, the administrative structure that already exists, how you might expand or supplement it, and their history with past things. And again, private 501c3 nonprofit colleges and universities in the United States generally will have a history of federal funding and their compliance with that can be referred to. This part here is going to be a bookkeeping question and a talk with the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. All right, so now organizations that you will partner with. So this is an interesting one because if you're just reading this, this might be the first time that you're noticing that another organization is engaged. Now, you'll be including these things as an attachment. When you work with these organizations, you can help them tailor the statement that they give to provide support. And I wouldn't go ahead and get all new partners unless there's a group that you've always been looking to work with. This is almost always organizations that have already worked with you, whether with providing clinical opportunities to students, being places where your alums have gone on to teach at, things that demonstrate connections and longer relationships. Biographical sketches, you'd be surprised how many people submit their bio at the last minute. That's why we're trying to catch it now. It is often faster to have someone ghostwrite a biography based on existing material and a CV and ask someone to fact check that biography than to get them to turn in it anew, which is okay. We just want to know this at the start. And the educator and administrative expertise. Okay, so looking forward, this is something that you might say, we want to do things like just start making a tally of things that could be referred to in the application. Now, note that for this particular program, not 71, the project director is not required to be a nurse educator or administrator. Remember, the diversity program number 71, that requires that you have a registered nurse, so someone who has a current nursing license being the administrator. This person must have at least a master's or a doctoral degree, but is not necessarily the person who will be driving, program recruitment and leadership like the diversity program we were looking at as well. But they must be directly affiliated with the nursing education unit. Okay, so if we look at this here, we see, all right, this is more pro forma. This is standard information you would include with most things to demonstrate you have a responsible project director. If you have someone who's applied as a PI for some other award, for example, an NIH-funded research project, you can probably reuse much of that or refer to that. This I personally like, that you don't have to submit a budget narrative. It's not that they are hard to write, they're just time consuming, and it skips this. All right, so required documents. Accreditation, not going to be a problem if your program is accredited, which is a prerequisite for applying to this. Great. Sometimes it does take time to dig up all the official paperwork. Again, that's going through another office, so start that early. Because look at what we need. The official letter that includes proof of continuing accreditation and these other things. Now, looking at roughly 9 months of lead time, not a problem to get this. Just if you're trying to get it in the weekend before it's due, that might be rushing a little bit. Uh, and also, if your program has recently expanded, if you've changed the degree programs, there might be some additional documentation that goes with that. And I want to point out this because sometimes schools launch, and we've had some of our alums go on to teach at schools that were more newly launched and hadn't received their full accreditation. That is not necessarily a disqualifying factor. We have this note here. If a nursing program is new and therefore not yet accredited, but will likely be accredited in the future, the Secretary of Education may deem it accredited if the program meets accreditation standards before the second entering class begins their academic year. And then there's a way to provide that. All right, so maintenance of effort documentation. So this is basically what the institution is supplying, which can be cash, in kind, and other things. So this is basically what the institution is bringing to the table. It is helpful to demonstrate that even if you're saying, oh, we get this award, we will dedicate X% of this faculty, staff, administrator time towards it. All right. And then we have some other details about how the loan disbursement plan will go. And note that, very importantly, for any online graduate nursing program, full-time versus part-time, how many students are you planning to support in each of those? And so this is one of those things where there have been past iterations that were full-time only, but recognizing the current nature of graduate education and that many of our students are working full-time and studying part or full-time, depending on the time of year and how busy they are, that gives a welcome bit of flexibility. This relatively easy to organize. And then this is for institutions that have already gotten one award and are now applying for additional things. All right, moving on here. This is a special case for returning programs. This is talking about things like the sites that you are cooperating with to provide the different educational and teaching opportunities. And see biographical sketches of the key people involved in this. And I would say stick to the no more than 2 pages per person. When I've been on federal grant committees, they usually tell you you are only required to review X pages. And so you want to make sure that what you are putting in front of them will fit within that and not have something important that's left out because they reached 2 pages and stopped. Okay, so now you'll see that these biographical sketches include a lot of information. The personal statement will be more customized. This is going to be pulling high-level details from CVs and stuff. So you can get through much of this just by collecting the resumes or CVs of the people who are serving as the key positions, and then only going to them for things like the personal statement, while prompting them on the things that you would like them to include. This is a big one. I saw more than one application where emphasizing the multilingual fluency and for people for whom non-native English speaking was part of their background, to point out how they had gotten things like glowing faculty reviews that showed that they were skilled teachers and administrators. All right. Now, this is a fun, we'll say, divergence. So a other document states that in general, opportunities will count the biographical sketches towards the page limit. This specific opportunity doesn't do that. All right, and the rest are standardized forms that are included in most federal funding applications. All right. So now let us go ahead and talk about the application review. And this is where we're going to spend most of the last portion of our time, because the application review process helps us understand what is actually going to be used to score these applications, and therefore what kinds of details might be helpful to arrange, to emphasize, to document. And so we see that there is a formula to determine how much money is awarded. And so based on the number of terms, if we are using Abilene Christian University as an example, rather than a different institution that you're teaching at or planning to teach at or serve as an administrator, well, at ACU Online, we have our spring one, spring two, summer one, summer two, fall one, fall two. So that's 6 terms. Tuition expenses, etc. This is going to be a matter of consulting the relevant catalog. Total number of students in both categories, which support is being requested. And then we see that all this is used to go into a calculator to determine how much money the federal government would offer for this loan fund to support the number of students that you submit. Now, a key weakness to avoid is that if you have a plan to expand your program through something like this, that you indicate that expansion in your narrative clearly, because if you do not have that information in there, the applicant reviewers might look at this and say, hey, they mentioned this number of students here, this number of students there. And so what I would recommend in a case like that is when you are listing these, also put in parentheses an expansion of X. So that's clear that you are identifying one of the things that your institution will do with this award to grow the program in some shape or form. Okay, and risk review, this is out of your hands, but except for these things to make sure that it looks like you are able to do the project. And with that, we have the final thing, completeness of application, available funds, assessed risk. So it varies on the year, but often the HRSA programs, they review applications on a rolling basis, by which point, I mean, when the application goes out, when the notice is published and they start accepting applications, they will review them as they come in. And so this is another reason why we're talking about this now, where we're talking about a program that's probably going to start accepting applications next February, because they're going to be asking for, generally speaking, very similar things. And you can have much of your information already gathered and have drafts of the narrative waiting to be customized in case there are any changes in the next year's program or what they're asking for in different sections. But you know that, broadly speaking, they do have to ask about these kinds of details. It's really a question of are there things that you need to highlight for a specific application year? All right. Now, one of the reasons we're talking about this here is ACU, besides my past work on federal grant applications, is that we see the funding priority will be given to eligible applicants that support students in doctoral nursing programs. And that includes the DNP. And although I'm not aware of any efforts to expand that, if some year down the line, there is a desired collaboration and joint degree program to produce an EDD in nursing education. That is an example that they've explicitly said would be supported by this opportunity. So with that, I think we are reaching the end of our main discussion on this. So let's just do a recap of some of the things that we've talked about by way of looking at this application checklist. So the Nurse Loan Faculty Program is an annual funding opportunity administered by the Health Resources and Services Administration, which is an entity of the U.S. federal government that provides funding specifically to promote nursing graduates who go on to teach at other nursing programs in different guises. This can include teaching in other college and university programs. It can include mentorship by advanced practice nurses, and there are a few other things that I've seen covered there. Now, looking at the guidelines from last year and comparing those with those in previous years, it does appear that these have remained pretty consistent in the last 17 or so years of the program. Sometimes they emphasize different sub-priorities or different things that will receive extra consideration, but it's been broadly the same. And what does that mean? There'll be a summary that you will include. There will be a narrative and some forms related to that you describe about what you plan to be doing, how you'll keep track of how it will work, and the structure that you have built or will build to maintain it. There's a number of supporting documents that need to be provided. There are things like the evaluation plan that can be borrowed or modeled after those of peer institutions. Again, I have found that colleagues have been very generous in providing sample applications upon request. And as public records, you can also be through the Freedom of Information Act and other channels, you can also request copies of other institutions' applications. Barring some protected details, most of the application itself should be public record and thus requestable about that. And how fast they get back to you, that one may be a little slower, but in my last records request, they got back to me in less than a month with the things that I requested. It is one of those truisms in life that everything is easier if you've done it before. It's also a whole lot easier to write something if you have a model of something that was successful at that, because you can see how these things were formulated, see kinds of details you might highlight from your own program, and see how it tells a convincing narrative that the institution can run that program. All right, the last thing I'm going to do before I stop the recording and open this to any questions is we're going to take a quick look back at the other application that we were discussing. So for those of you who joined us late, we're just talking about this program here. This is the Nursing Workforce Diversity Program, which is designed to allow programs that are training nurses to work to recruit, retain, support nurses in their formation and education so they can thrive, complete the program, and expand our workforce. So if we look at the checklist for this particular opportunity, we see it is broadly the same. We have accreditation documentation, letters of agreement for groups that you might be working with, maintenance of effort documentation. And it has a few other things. We have letters of support that you can include. Awesome. But if we were to go through and compare these two lists side by side, we find that a third of the things that show up in this list are also in the other application. And so if you are considering applying for one, you might say, okay, given the shared compatibility here and the overlap, why not apply for both? Why not work towards that as a specific goal and have one set of conversations for these two different opportunities that you're applying for? And then because they have different deadlines, you're not trying to submit them both at the exact same time. All right, if you are joining us for the Mixing Loan Faculty webinar, I just want to repeat here, if you're looking for a federal grant off cycle, make sure that you look at the closed opportunities, because the federal government is pretty good at marking things that have officially reached their submission deadline for this year as closed, and so they won't show up in the default search. If you're interested in working on a grant application and working in cooperation with the ACU Online Writing Center, and we've had students, we've had faculty, we've had staff come in on these things, then you can go ahead and schedule an appointment online by going to my.acu.edu and under groups, selecting the Online Writing Center and following the instructions. If you have a quick question, or if you'd like to request a grant workshop or something like that, just send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu and we'll go from there. And again, we are available to the whole ACU online community, faculty, staff, administrators, students, and recent alumni. So this concludes our webinar on applying for the Nurse Faculty Loan Program. We'll have a few minutes in case anyone has any questions they'd like to sneak in before the next webinar. Thanks for joining us.